Hello, welcome to Marc Freak. That's me, and it's my Super Geek Week. As a brief introduction, it's the first time I've ever done one of these. So if I look a little bit sort of shy and embarrassed, it's because I'm not used to doing these on my own. So I am Marc Freak, and I'm a singer, I'm a bass player and guitarist in bands called Freak Circus and a Bowie cover band called Avid Bowie. I'm also an author, so I'm in a couple of books, one of which is called Farmer Peters and his Underworld Adventure, and you can hear some of my stories, and you can get some of my music from this YouTube channel. Yada yada yada. I'm also sort of an artist, photographer, poet, and obviously a geek. Hence this vlog. So what's the purpose of this weekly vlog? I say weekly. That's certainly my intention. What I plan to do is share with you my adventures into geekdom and basically anything else that I may have done in the last 7 days, because I'm sure you're really interested in that. Aside from doing this and this channel, you can also catch me every Saturday, because I co-host with my son Lewis a weekly Doctor Who podcast, which is called Doctor Who Time and Space, and that's on his broadcast on his YouTube channel, Mr. Lewis Moon. And we also do an occasional vidcast together, Behind the Sofa, which you can catch, which is again very much a Doctor Who related thing. So the main thrust of this vlog is going to be a place where I can talk about what I've been watching in the last 7 days. Sometimes I watch a lot, sometimes I don't, but I will talk about those things that I do view, and I'll give you my thoughts and my views on it. So in terms of what sort of things I'll be covering, I mean, the type of things that interest me, I grew up on a diet of J.R. Tolkien. I used to read 2000 AD all the time. I sort of was really into, being sort of a 70s child, I was really into Star Wars and Blake Seven. I used to watch Doctor Who a lot. I then stopped probably around the time that a lot of people sort of began to lose interest in it. Probably Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy sort of time. And then I started watching it again since my son Lewis has got heavily into it. In more recent times, I got really into Game of Thrones and the Song of Ice and Fire book series. So desperately, come on, George R. Martin, we need him to hurry up and finish Winds of Winter. It sort of seems a long time now. We need to get it out there. TV wise, really loving Walking Dead, and also I know not everybody's enjoyed it, but I really enjoyed the spin-off to that, Fear Walking Dead series of Walking Dead, which starts next month, October. Not seen the new series of Fear yet, so I don't have AMC, but I'm sure I'll catch up with that at some point when they start streaming that on Amazon Prime or wherever they're going to host it. Also really love Breaking Bad. Just got the end of Breaking Bad recently, but I won't be talking about that today. Outcast was really cool. Jessica Jones was good, and the first season of Daredevil. I've been rewatching Blake Seven for the first time since the early, probably the early 80s, I think, when it first came out. So I hadn't seen that since I watched it as a child, so I'm enjoying that again. I've got a stack of things to watch, whole load of spaghetti westerns, got Deadwood, I've got the old Sapphire and Steel era obsession, and I've been quite immersed in Ripper Street, so I'll be talking about that a little bit on here. So that's the sort of things I'm going to be rambling on about, I guess, over the next coming weeks. And I also play a lot of Lord of the Rings online, so I may occasionally chat a bit about that as well. But this week I was going to focus primarily on Daredevil season 2 and the first episode of that, and then I'll also touch on a bit of classic Who that Lewis and myself have watched, which was Planet of Evil. So spoiler alert if you haven't seen either of those, or also if you haven't seen Daredevil series 1, because I may touch on that a little bit. So let's kick off with Daredevil first of all. As a sort of general point, I'm fairly bored of superhero films. I think there's far too many of them, and because they're all sort of an hour and a half to 2 hours long, it just seems to be wedged full of sort of fighting, and there's very little time to really understand who's who, particularly when you get the sort of multi-superhero type arrangements. But whilst I say that, I've watched 2 of the Netflix series. I watched Jessica Jones and then the first batch of Daredevil, and those are fantastic, really, really watchable. And I think what the difference is that because they're based over sort of 10, 13, I can't remember the exact number now, sort of 10 to 13 episodes, rather than being sort of an hour and a half long, it really gives you time to dig into the characters, and not just the heroes as well. You don't only get into the minds of the heroes, but you also get to understand the villains as well. I think the first season when we had Kingpin in it was a really good example of that, where some of the episodes actually seemed really focused on understanding Kingpin. So you sort of got a good feel for why he was who he was, and sometimes even perhaps had a little bit of element of sympathy for him as well. So series 2 of Daredevil kicks off in the aftermath of Kingpin's arrest, and there's a real void in the criminal fraternity, and the various gangs of Hell's Kitchen are looking to fill that gap. And we see this Irish gang who are beginning to talk the talk about how they're going to sort of come back in and regain the ground they lost to Kingpin. And just as they're all sort of getting a bit sort of boozy and chatty about that, they get wasted by this big, what they think is a sort of like a gangland attack by some sort of heavily armed mobsters. And the sole survivor of that attack starts to seek out solicitors, Murdoch, i.e. Daredevil, and Nelson, due to the role that they played in bringing down Kingpin's regime. What we find out at the end of the episode is that we're not talking a gang at all, but we're talking one single killer. And although we don't know who that is yet, it's actually the Punisher, and he's played by John Bernthal, who, for those that watch The Walking Dead, would really call him as Shane from Walking Dead. And actually, as I understand it, I think there will be a separate spin-off series of the Punisher as well. We get like a sort of touch on it a bit more later, but there's a real kick-ass fight at the end between Daredevil and the Punisher, and Murdoch's Daredevil was warned about coming up against guns and gets a full blast at the cliffhanger. So that's really good. And so it's actually a really fantastic first episode, really fast-paced, cool combat sequences. What I'll do generally, I think, if I've got sort of one main program that I'm talking about and a couple of other things, the main one's going to have a little thing where I talk about my 5 favorite things. So first up, I really love the scene near the beginning where Daredevil's chasing a group of armed robbers, and one of the villains gets this really good thwatting by having his sort of head smashed against a car, which is really good. And there's a really cool bit in a kitchen where Daredevil floors one of the villains, and then the various cooks that are standing there decide to actually join in and give the foe a good pounding, which is good fun. 2, I said earlier on that I really love character development in the series, and the first episode sort of kicked off really with just equally as strong as what we'd seen in the previous series. Really good relationship between Murdoch and Foggy. That's really great. Foggy's really concerned about the safety of Murdoch. He's not only his best friend, but of course also he's also sort of his co-worker, his partner at the legal firm. And in a great quote that Foggy said to the police officer at one stage in it, "You can trust us, we're lawyers," which I thought was cool. In a similar way, the interplay between Karen Page and both Foggy and Murdoch is really good. So Foggy's obviously really fancies Karen, but it's probably fair to say that Karen actually has a thing for Murdoch, and that sort of brings me on nicely to 5 favourite things 3. Can I do that? Yeah. I think it's really cool the way that the Daredevil series portrays Murdoch's increased senses. So obviously being Daredevil, he's got no sight, but he's sort of hypersensitive in terms of all the senses. So whether he's picking up heartbeats or voices, they really do that really, really cleverly, I think, and you do get the sense when you're watching it that he's picking up what he's picking up. Really effectively done. And probably the sort of main time in this particular episode is when he's standing at the pool table with Karen, and you can sort of hear her heart beating and things like that, because she's obviously quite excited because she's got a bit of a thing going on for the Murdoch man. 4. Probably the scene I talked about earlier on, where the Punisher wipes out pretty much the whole of that Irish gang, and that was really cool, really exciting bit. So I mean, I didn't know anything about this series. I did know about the Punisher being in it, but that was about it. So when this Irish gang came into it, I assumed they were going to have some sort of part. I thought they'd have a fairly, if not a major role, they would certainly be sort of like the main villains perhaps for the first episode, but that isn't the case at all. And they're in it for sort of a couple of minutes, good little bit of dialogue amongst themselves, and then they're all wiped out brutally. One of the guys loses a hand, and then finally 5. Well, it's got to be the final big duel between the Punisher and the Daredevil, and basically the Daredevil sort of pouncing just as the Punisher's about to take out that sole survivor of the gangland attack, which is Karen sort of racing off with him in her car, and he's just about to sort of take a killer blow to the head, and the Daredevil pounces, and a really, really great bit of fighting between the two of them, and I'm sure that's something we're going to see quite a lot throughout the whole of the series. So a really exciting end to the first episode, and a really promising start to the second series. I've been told by those in the know that this series is even better than the first one. And if so, I'm in for a real treat, because I really enjoyed Daredevil season 1. So definitely one to watch, folks. And I'll be talking about the next few episodes probably in the next few weeks. So aside from that, I was going to talk a little bit about Doctor Who. So Lewis and myself watched the Tom Baker 4-parter Planet of Evil, and this one had the Doctor and Sarah Jane answering a distress call in the TARDIS, which takes them to a planet called Zeta Minor, and this is the last planet in the known universe. So it's sort of a kind of gateway to the antimatter world. And their arrival coincides with a military mission to rescue a group of scientists, and they're on this expedition to discover a new power source for their planets. That said, Zeta Minor isn't overly keen on the idea of them actually running away with its power source, and it starts to protect itself from them taking it. And so the sort of members of the expedition sort of mysteriously dying, with all their life being sucked out of them, leaving them like these sort of skeletal zombie type looking beings. Not very nice at all. So all in all, well, let's just go on to what we're gonna do. So we had 5 best things. I think with the other stuff, the stuff I'm just touching on, we'll have 3 best things. 3. So number 1, Tom Baker. Gotta love Tom Baker. I mean, he's my personal favourite Doctor. He was the one that I grew up with, and the story with him in it doesn't disappoint at all. It's actually smack in the middle of, I guess, probably what's Doctor Who's strongest ever era story-wise, because me and Liv have been watching a lot of the John Pertwee ones. We've been watching the Tom Baker ones, and whilst this episode isn't a isn't the genesis of the Daleks, it's still really, really enjoyable. And as far as Tom Baker, I think there's a really good reason why, if most people are picturing Doctor Who, they tend to picture a sort of scarf-wearing, jelly baby-eating Tom Baker. And that's despite the large number of regenerations that we've had since. So I still think Tom Baker's the strongest of the lot. 2, I quite like the way, actually, that we don't have a proper monster here. I mean, Doctor Who's always really strong with its monsters, even if the classic era ones look a little bit rubbery now, but we like that. And I guess they're sort of, you see the sort of the I don't know how to phrase it. It's not really a monster, it's more so let's say the planet protecting itself, the sort of energy thing. But that's the nearest we get to a monster. But it's just really the planet itself is the foe, I guess, and it does that by infecting the expedition. 3, I think it's probably actually the look of it. So back in those days of Doctor Who, they never really used to go out on to sort of exotic locations like they do now, because obviously now they go to lavish places like Wales. But actually, it looks pretty good, and really good, sort of like a sort of jungly sort of area in particular. So I'd say it's not the best story of this great part of the classic Who era, but it's still a really good watch if you enjoy classic Doctor Who. So catch that one as well. And I think we're going to be watching another Tom Baker one this week. I think we're going to be watching the Sunmakers, and we'll talk about that not only on here. I'll just touch on it briefly here. We'll talk about that in a lot more detail on Lewis's channel on the Doctor Who Time and Space one. So that's it for now. So stay tuned for my future vlogs. As I say, I'm going to try and do them on a weekly basis, probably on either a Monday or a Tuesday. I'm thinking certainly once The Walking Dead next season kicks off, I'll definitely be doing that on a Tuesday. So it gives me time to sort of watch that and then give you my thoughts on the most recent episode. And similarly, then moving on to Game of Thrones, whenever that comes out next year, definitely be on a Tuesday then as well. So that's it for now. See you soon, fellow freaks.